Good evening. I'm here to check in with you for day 39 of our Panchakarma. And as promised, I am going to share a samskara clearing pranayama practice with you that also incorporates Nasya or neti oilination. And I'm going to lay this all out for you, but I do want to say that this practice is not appropriate for everyone. So if you deal with certain medical conditions, it can actually be contraindicated. If you deal with high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, epilepsy, if you're pregnant, menstruating, or if you deal with chronic vertigo, this is not the right practice for you, okay? If you work with these pranayamas and you notice that you end up having an issue with feeling dizzy or lightheaded, stop. If you work with these pranayamas and you find you have a bout of vertigo, come on, stop. This is not meant to frighten you, but it is to say that you might have something going on with your blood pressure that you are not aware of, and you should consult a medical practitioner in that case. As always, with everything I'm bringing in here, use your discernment. If you are dealing with a medical condition or if you have any questions, you should consult your physician, okay? These are very safe methods to work with though, all right? I don't want you to feel nervous about exploring this if you're in good health generally, if you're not dealing with cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure or these conditions that I mentioned, then this is a safe space for you to explore and lean into, and it will be very supportive of any kind of trauma healing work that you are doing, all right? This can also be supportive for those who struggle with PTSD. And PTSD is a whole other level of being stuck in these neural loops, right? And I understand that because I've struggled with PTSD myself. I have gotten to a place where I have largely overcome it. There are certain times when I can still experience something that activates me, but I'm able to create some space between it now where it's more from an observational point, and instead of getting kind of embroiled and feeling like I'm back in that time and place like I used to before. And the thing that's challenging with PTSD is that many things can activate it very suddenly, and then you get this disassociative response where you feel transported back to that time and place of the initial trauma. And this is very much like indicative of this samskara concept of this like psychic wound. It creates this frisson within the psychology, and then it's almost like there's this scar tissue that forms, this psychic scar tissue. I'm speaking totally metaphysically here right now. I'm speaking energetics, okay? So, sometimes you can see this in the brain. You can see this in the brain when they do imagery of the brain. You can see certain points of activation in people who struggle with different kinds of issues. We know that what happens to us physically can certainly impact us psychologically. There can be experiences we have that leave an imprint on our brains. And there's certain things that we can do to support our brain health, So this is not so out there when I'm bringing in. And you'll find that as you work with these techniques, it's extremely beneficial. What I'm bringing in here is not only nourishing for the nervous system, but it's also stimulating and nourishing for the pineal and the pituitary gland. And it is very much about getting that lymphatic lymph system flowing, all right? Which is an extension of your lymph system. It's the lymph system for these upper channels. It's also the lymph system that's responsible for transporting the cerebral spinal fluid to these upper channels, which is what you need for nourishment, okay, and for the health of your nervous system. If there's any kind of blockage in this channel, it can cause issues, all right? It can cause issues. We want that flow because what did we learn about the lymphatic system when we were dropping in with working our lymph to get that detoxification process going? We learned that emotions and thoughts are intimately connected to the lymphatic system. And if your lymphatic system is blocked, there's going to be like these holding patterns. It will cause the thoughts to be kind of stuck. It will cause the emotions to be held back, to not flow. You get the lymphatic system to flow. What happens? Often there's emotional release. Often the thoughts can change. And so this is just taking that same concept and bringing it into the upper channels for this stimulation to break up the inertia, bring in the nourishment for the nervous system, create the calming, and it can be like an energetic rewiring of the consciousness so that you can get out of these repeated neural loops where you're going over the same old story again and again. And the more that you do that, the more that you focus on this one point of psychic wounding, it just builds up the scar, it builds up the scar, it builds up the scar, and then you get stuck in that place, all right? So we're breaking this up so that you can start to dissolve these areas of psychic scar tissue, okay? And you can begin to move through the release of this trauma and clear out these psychic imprints, all right? So the practice begins first with oilination of the sinus cavity. And this is also to bring that nourishment up to that third eye, ajna, okay? To change the way you view things, to change your vision, okay? It activates this change, this shift in the consciousness to be able to have things open and flowing and the ability to look at things in a new way. It's also nourishing for the nervous system. Nourishes the nervous system, all these upper channels, okay? Very helpful for nourishing, the flow of the lymphatic system and getting that cerebral spinal fluid flowing harmoniously so there aren't any blockages. This is so important to carry this nourishment up to the consciousness, to nourish it. So we're not getting kind of like stuck all up in our heads. We can't get this energy to move, all right? We want this to move. We want this to flow. We know that there's an interconnection between mind, body, spirit with everything we're working with in Ayurveda, and they all work together synergistically. We want to get the flow going. We want to enter that flow so we don't get stuck. We don't get stuck in these old stories. We don't get stuck in these painful memories. We don't become more entangled in the trauma. Okay, so you can do this with working with neti pot with warm ghee, like in that video that I brought in. So you can look back on that to get very specific instruction if you would like to experiment with that with this exercise that I'm going to bring in. You can also do it with Nasya, okay, which is very simple. You just take a little warm sesame oil, raw sesame oil, or warm ghee. You put it in the palm of your hand, about, I don't know, a half a teaspoon worth. You close off your sinus cavity on one side and you just inhale it. Rub it into the sinuses and then you do the other side. Simple, easy peasy, okay? So that's the first part. Those of you who really want to go deep, you can work with the ghee or the warm sesame oil in the neti pot. If you're going to go to that level, I suggest you do this maybe like once a week while you're working with this, all right? The second part is Kapalabhati, skull shining breath, also known as breath of fire. This is getting the breath to work like a bellows, to build the Agni, the heat, the transformational fire. And this transformational fire helps us transmute our thoughts. It helps us transmute this energy. It helps purify the consciousness. And you will feel it because as we build this Agni, this heat, it rises, okay? And they call it skull shining breath because it clears all these upper channels and it has a very transformational effect. You are taking these trauma loops and you are offering them upon the pyre of Agni to be burned away and purified so you can have this openness and this clarity in the consciousness, okay? So to do this breath, it's all nasal breathing only. Mouth is closed, okay? You inhale. Really bring the breath all the way up, kind of that yogic Durga pranayama where you're allowing the lower belly to expand, carrying it up to the lungs, allowing the rib cage to expand out to the sides, carrying it up to anahata, the heart chakra, allowing those collarbones, to spread. And then when you exhale, you're exhaling with intention through the nose, like, okay? And when you exhale with intention through the nose, you're sucking your belly button back as if to meet the spine. And then you inhale again and you let the belly expand out. So you're working with your breath that's making your belly kind of like a bellows, okay? Like you're building the fire. And it looks like this. You start out kind of slowly. It might take you a minute to kind of get in the rhythm with it, and then you'll find the rhythm takes over. I often hear, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can in my head, like the little engine that could. And Agni is the little engine that could, all right? It is the pranayama of transformation, and it really helps to burn through these samskaras, okay? So it looks something like this. I'm just going to do it briefly to show you so you can get a feel for it. Okay, I can already feel things moving just from that little bit. Now, you can do this for like 5 minutes if you like, and take little breaks. You might need to take breaks, especially as you're starting, okay? And I encourage it. And it's quite advanced level if you can keep a breath of fire for 5 minutes solid, okay? So don't be hard on yourself. Let yourself ease into this practice. And even if you just did it for a minute, that's wonderful, right? It's really going to start to build this internal heat, this transformational heat inside. Agni. With a little Agni, man, you can do anything, okay? It is the little engine that could. And then after you've done this Kapalabhati, this breath of fire, you're going to move into Brahmari breath, okay? It's also known as like bee humming breath, okay? And to do this, it's so simple. It's so simple. And it feels amazing, okay? You take your thumbs and you press into this little, fleshy part of your ear here to close off the ear canal, okay? So you don't want to do this Brahmari breath if you have an active ear infection either, along with the other conditions I mentioned, okay? Super important, all right? So you press in, and now you're just in your internal hearing, right? You take these fingers and you just gently rest them right here, okay? And you're going to keep your mouth closed. You're going to inhale through your nose, and as you exhale, you're going to hum, and you're going to feel this lovely vibration through the skull. Like so. And you can do as many rounds of that as you wish. This is the practice. It's that simple. And it makes such a difference. Such a difference. It's so transformational, just this simple practice. So I encourage you to experiment with this, and especially if you are struggling with any of these kind of issues, if you're in a trauma release, trauma healing process, it can be so beneficial for you. And just getting those nourishing influences into these upper channels and bringing in that supportive energy for the nervous system, it can make all the difference for you. Okay. So tomorrow is our last day, and I really want to bring in a special healing session, but there's something else that I want us to work with for day 40. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule a healing session that we will do here on the channel, and I'll make an announcement about that tomorrow, what day we're going to do that. Tomorrow, I want you to have your letter ready that you wrote when you first started this journey. We're going to do a little work around that, okay? And I'll fill you in on when we're going to have the healing circle that is open to everybody. You're all always welcome here. All of you are always welcome in this space, even in this Panchakarma space. Even if you haven't gone through Panchakarma, I want you to explore on this channel and just have this as a resource for bringing this self-care and this support into your life. And it's my desire to pass this on to anybody who is ready to receive it, because it made such a huge difference in my own life and was a very foundational part of my own healing process. So I really believe in that, like, pay it forward, and that's what it's all about for me. So thank you so much to all of you who have been supporting the channel, tuning in. I really value you, and thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I'll see you tomorrow.